and like this is the part you go in. I'm gonna be like, I hate Magic the Gathering, and then that can like be like the start leading into everything.
That's just it.
Yeah, exactly.
Despise the game. It's terrible for people. Awful. Are you playing Magic the Gathering right now and feel like maybe the community is not for you? Maybe you need a new game in your life, and maybe it's time to switch to something a little bit easier, a little bit cheaper, and maybe has a better community standing. Hi, I'm PJ with the Shuffle Squad, and today on this video we're going to be talking about Magic the Gathering, its community and gameplay, and why a lot of players are switching from that game into Pokemon the trading card game. We're going to be talking to professional Magic players in this series and get their perspective on what they think about transitioning to Pokemon. We're going to give it a go here, so stick around for everything that there is to come. Now, James, I've known you for a while, but I'm sure a lot of the people outside of, paying attention to the late night casting for EU, they probably don't know who you are. So I kind of want to have you give your background on, when you started playing Magic, how long you've been playing, your, your role in the community, and then also some perspective on, playing Pokemon, because that's how we met each other too, is through playing Pokemon.
Yeah, so I'll tell how we met, and it's like actually kind of crazy, and it's like embarrassing for me, not so much you. But let me talk about myself first, because that's absolutely what I love to do, right? So guys, if you don't know who I am, I go by Voiddyn on the internet. I've been a part of the Magic the Gathering community, God, since 2019, 2018. It's been a long time, man. But like I've never really been I was a streamer starting in 2021, maybe 2021, right? Because that's when I stopped playing Pokemon at the shop.
Yeah, right before the pandemic.
When did ADP get printed?
No, it got printed in 2020. So
when was it played? 2021?
Yeah, I mean, well, define played, I suppose, because it was
when
played
did it become when did it become the deck?
It was like it was the Australian internationals when Sword and Shield released, because then you had Zacian V.
Okay. Well, whenever that is, that's when you could consider me like no longer a huge Pokemon player. I was in the Magic the Gathering community.
Sure.
I was all into like Commander and playing Magic the Gathering Arena. So at least since 2021. Actually, it's whenever I started my job, when I worked from home.
Sure.
So 2021.
Yep.
So I've almost been at my company for 3 years, so two and a half years, which is insane, right?
I know. Yeah.
So I've been playing Magic. I played Magic since about 2014, 2013, so almost 10 years of Magic now. I played the main format that I play is Commander. I played Commander when we picked up they made like, how like they have like the championship decks, right, that you can buy
in a box.
So Magic has these like starter decks, which are kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
Right? You're supposed to be able to break them out of the box, play a semi-competitive deck or a semi-cool themed deck. And I started Commander when those just came out.
Got it.
So that's kind of where I got everything started with that. Afterwards, I started streaming Magic the Gathering. I joined a streaming community called F2K, Fade to Karma, where I met some of my like really good friends. They moved on to Top Deck Studios, which I'm still a part of now, even though I'm not really streaming as much right now. But and then now I'm kind of just doing my own thing with Pokemon. It's really just that. That's really it. PJ, I know we met in like 2020, maybe 2019.
Yeah, like 2019. I think I started coming to the shop because I'm like, what is the competitive Pokemon meta anymore? Like, what does it look like? Turns out I had a card shop down the street from me, so it was nice to just stop in and like, you were playing there with a couple of other locals, but yeah.
I mean, the way that we met was literally, you would come up to us while we were playing and you'd be like, how do you feel about this? And then you'd start talking to us.
Right.
And then you took a little bit because we were antisocial. Right. And then you broke in, and then all of a sudden there was no more bubble. There was no more like click. It was now we are just Pokemon players playing.
Right.
And as soon as that happened, it like everything blew up. So in a good way.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like It was pretty easy to just kind of crack the code because like I had played as a kid,
Mhm.
and just coming in, now I have kids. I want them to be able to play at some local shop because you used to play at toy stores and now you don't
Yep.
do that anymore. So that was like the place to play, and it was nice to have that small like niche community. But now Pokemon is so much bigger than it was through the pandemic, and that was like a big reason for me that I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna stick with this. We're creating the Shuffle Squad, and that's another thing we kind of
Right.
we hatched the idea together for Shuffle
Well, yeah,
Squad.
I mean, so I mean, if anybody wants to know how the Shuffle Squad was made, it was me and PJ sitting down, going, "All right, let's make a competitive team because it's real easy. Like, you just sit down and you just do it." I know that
Right.
sounds like, and then I don't know, like 3 months into it, ADP hit, and I was having an absolute miserable time playing Pokemon because I was a one prize attacker player, right?
Right.
And that was all I liked playing at the time. I liked playing spread, right? Um, and then I was like, man, this is not fun. I don't get to play the deck that I want to. Every matchup's the same. It's extremely boring. And then PJ's like, well, yeah, so what do you want to do about the Shuffle Squad stuff? I'm like, I don't know. See ya.
Yeah, right. We were trying to do like tabletop, like the most jank way
Hmm.
of giving tabletop content, and it just like wasn't working. But you had experience because you saw all these streamers, and you were more involved with Twitch and other
Right.
communities like Magic the Gathering. Obviously, they had a little bit nicer of a platform
Yeah.
for Magic, so
Yeah.
that's kind of where your starting ground was from. It was just so easy to transition, right? And that's kind of another
Hmm.
thing that I wanted to talk to you about, getting into Magic. What was your perspective of, starting that game? Where did you start? How did you get into it more? And, obviously you stream and you were featured on Channel Fireball and so on and so
Yep.
forth. So all of these things, tell me how you got there.
Man, I will tell you that if it wasn't for the friends that I made and so one of the biggest things that people don't realize about streaming is everything's about who you know, and not in like a I know, my uncle's a senator type deal. You know what I mean? No, it's like you have to be involved in communities, you have to insert yourself into places.
Yep.
And that's what I think a lot of people don't want to do. They don't want to step up, and they don't want to like be that guy that's like, hey, I'm a part of your community, I also stream, like
Mm.
check me out sometime, let's hang out, let's be friends, right? You know what I mean? Like, and
Exactly.
there's a good way to do it, and not a good way to do it, right? Like, maybe if you
Mm.
go into some guy's stream and you're like, hey, I'm here, I joined your community, come check out my stream, it's
Right.
probably not a good way to do it.
Mm.
But like, you join someone's thing, you genuinely say, hey, I'm your peer. Maybe the guy has two more viewers than you. But talking about how I got into MTG and like, you know taking that step and all that stuff was just one day I was just like, man, I really want to stream Arena. I've really wanted to stream for such a long time. And then before you know it, I was doing Commander streams, I was doing
Mm.
Dungeons and Dragons streams, and then I was invited to Command Fest, right? Because of the
Yeah.
people that I knew, and I was a
Right.
I was a featured guest there.
Right.
And then, then I was like, man, don't this is like a big warning. If you're a huge fan of something, don't overdo it. Like
Yeah.
you get burnout real hard, especially because streaming and all this other stuff is based off how you very much view it as a reflection of your personality
Mm.
when it should not be.
Right.
I know that you sent me a whole list of questions, so I'm trying to not jump into the next question before you
Sure,
prep
sure.
it.
Well, talk to me. Like, you obviously wanted to stream Arena, so like, go in more depth on what got you playing Magic in the first place. Like, where did you start out? It wasn't like you just flipped on a game and you're like, "Oh, this is a cool game. Like, I'd like to play this online." Like,
Right. So I started playing in college with friends. I played in 2013 whenever Mirrored and Besieged came out. So
mm,
the way that Magic works, or Magic worked back then, is that you had three sets, right? So you know how
yeah,
in Pokemon you get a major set and then you get a mini set to help out that previous
right,
set.
yeah, like holiday
So
sets that we get.
right, well, like how the Japanese used to do it, that the
Sure,
Japanese players used to have, where they would have a big set or they'd have two mini sets that go together.
exactly.
Magic used to have a big set and then a tiny filler set and then
Mm-hmm.
another big set. So you would tell a story, right?
Okay.
First big set it was called blocks, right?
Yeah.
So you would have I started during Mirrodin Besieged block. So
Mhm.
you would have Mirrodin Scars of Mirrodin block. So Scars of Mirrodin, I started a little bit before that. I started in something called Rise of the Eldrazi, but this is funnier if I tell this story. So I played in Scars. Then you had this little sliver of block called Mirrodin Besieged, which gave you a little mini thing to bolster up everything else. It was not meant to be played by itself. It was meant to be played with every other cards that came in, and then you got New Phyrexia that came out. When I started playing, we were huge into drafting.
Okay.
And because we were not the smartest people, we drafted only Mirrodin Besieged, which had a very limited card pool that was supposed to be drafted with Scars of Mirrodin. So you would go
Okay.
2-pack Scars of Mirrodin, 1-pack Mirrodin Besieged. Because it was supposed to bolster that playstyle. It was supposed to be like a mini expansion pack. And I played so much Mirrodin Besieged, I can tell you that I lost to the same cards all the time. We saw the same cards all the time. It was crazy. Eventually, that transitioned to me playing outside of college, getting into Commander because it was a huge thing. And then when I was like streaming and I was like, I want to play Arena because I was a competitive 60 card player. I used to play at Grand Prix. That they don't exist anymore, but Grand Prix were like essentially the regionals of Pokemon. You'd have a format type, you'd subscribe to that format type, right? And then, you'd play that. And then so I would play a bunch of those, get my butt handed to me, not really day 2, but my friends would day 2, so I'd be stuck there. And then, eventually I got to the point where I was like, well, I need to be a better player, which means I need to play more. How do I play more? I'm going to play MTG Arena because that came out and that was huge. MTGO was scary. No one wanted to get into Magic the Gathering online. So you played Arena, and then I was like, well, I'm already playing all this Arena, and I like playing Magic, and I like playing Commander. Why don't I just stream Arena?
Yeah.
And then you found out when you streamed Arena, the only people that were coming to your streams were people that knew MTG Arena. And then you were like, okay, well, but at the same time, I could also play Commander because it's easier because I'm playing Commander with friends, right? And I don't know if you know this, but when you're streaming and entertaining, if you could bounce off other people, it gets all the workload off of you. You engage other people, you do all this stuff. Like one of the reasons why people do interviews, right? Not calling you out, PJ, but like, it's easy content, right?
Exactly.
But it's so much easier to just have someone else there with you.
Right.
So you would do Commander. Commander's successful because one, people want to see cool new stuff. 2, people want to see people play with friends, and they want to have this like social interaction that's there. And it's just like this whole community as it's on its own. And then I was like, well, I could, I'm not saying I was one of the first Commander streamers, but I was definitely there during the renaissance of it when it was first coming out.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, cool. I want to do this. I want to do Commander streams. So I did Commander streams once every week. Then I pushed it to once every other week because I got burnt out. And then I was playing so much Commander off streams as well because people would want to play with me.
Right.
People would want me on their streams. And then I'm just to the point where I'm like, I never want to touch Commander ever again. I went 3 months without playing, and then I started playing, and then I would only play one. I would say, okay, I'm going to guest on one person's stream a month because they asked me to come out, and it's only people that I know that are of a higher quality.
Right.
But then you get to this point where people, not that people get clicks, but there's this idea that you can only know so many people. Right? So as you get more people in, it pushes other people out.
Yeah.
And then you get so I would become the guy that was like the reliable person to get on, but I would jump in if people needed a fill. So people would be like, oh, I'm going to give Voiddyn this fill. I'm not going to send Voiddyn my schedule because so the way the Commander streams work is that they send out schedules, you fill out a spreadsheet, you say, I'm going to sign up for this time.
Yeah.
And I would be the person that would like not get the schedule. I'd be the person that gets called last minute 3 times a week because someone could not join.
Gotcha.
And I was just like, this is not the place I want to be. I don't want to be not to be woe is me, but I don't want to be the bridesmaid, never the bride. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You don't want to be called last for dodgeball. You don't want to be.
Well, I figure no one wanted to play with me because I'm such a good player. I'm extremely good looking. My voice is fantastic to listen to. And not just that, but I'm extremely buff and handsome.
There you go.
So
solid.
That's the real reason.
Yeah.
No, it's just that people get friends in their communities and they get closer and closer circles. And while I had that, I was like, I don't want to be a part of this thing where it's like you're playing with your best friends, or
Mhm.
you're the popular kids,
Yeah.
right? And I'm just like, look, obviously I'm getting kind of phased out of this thing,
Right.
so let me go to places where people want me, which happen to be the Pokemon community.
Yeah. So, how did you transition easier back into Pokemon when you kind of fell out because of the way the game design was? And
Mhm.
then talk to me about, what differences you really noticed between both of the games, having played both.
I think this is going to be very, very controversial that I say this, and it's not that bad. It's
Okay.
honestly not that bad. Like, it's going to sound worse than it actually is.
Okay.
But I think the invention of Commander has very much hurt 60 card formats.
Okay.
And this isn't a problem. And I'm not saying it ruined 60 card formats. I think 60 card formats are fine. But when you're trying to balance and do all this other stuff for different formats, it ruins your game as a whole, because it's a lot to keep up with. This
Hmm.
happens in everything. World of Warcraft had this huge thing, right, where they were trying to balance like 7 different moving parts at the same time.
Right.
It's not a problem, right? I'm not saying Commander's a problem. I'm saying that it made it extremely hard to balance for everything. So you only have a certain amount of stuff in a block to design for, right? Each set can only have a certain number of cards.
Hmm.
So game design has to go, all right, I'm filling this card in. This card's not great in 60 card ever, but it's great for Commander, right?
Right.
Or this card's not great for now, or this card is really, really lackluster in the standard format, but it's really good for modern. We'll worry about that later. And, I'm not going to pretend like I know how they design for cards,
Hmm.
because I don't. But
Right.
there are cards that clearly come out of there that go, wow, this is not a good card in any 60 card format, but this was made for Commander.
Yeah.
And then you have to sell for all these different things as well. Pokemon has the advantage of the only set or only thing that they care about is standard.
Yeah.
And they don't even pretend to care for expanded anymore. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah. I mean,
Like, and
we've
that's
been
okay.
trying for years to kind of make this Modge Podge of, or hodgepodge rather, of what would be an expanded format. And like you and I have talked about it extensively, it used to have
Right.
regional events and you just don't see it anymore. The closest thing, I guess, to an alternative format is a side event at a regional, hosting what's called GLC, which is
Right.
basically Pokemon's equivalent to how Commander works, where it's just like monotype and it's singles of every card that's in the deck. So it's not exact, but like that's what you're talking about, right? There's only one format as it stands right now, and they've kind of phased out anything else.
I will have you know that GLC is a really cool format, but it's something that you'll play for this is what Commander was supposed to be. Commander was supposed to be like GLC,
Yeah.
where you play it as a side event at a tournament. There's clearly some really good lists, and it's clearly dominated by a certain kind of deck type,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because new cards were printed,
Right.
and it was supposed to be a second thought, and then they would move on, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, talk to me about some of the standard decks that you'd have in Magic the Gathering currently. I mean, I've heard stories because I don't play Magic the Gathering personally,
Right.
but I've heard stories of like if you're going to play the standard format of Magic the Gathering, it's like
Mhm.
abysmal right now because of the card pool.
Yeah, let's take a look. I'm literally pulling up the results. So one of the cool things is that, like Limitless, there's a bunch of net decking statistics, right? Everything that's played in standard right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
It looks like to be almost the same lists that just never change, but not in a good way, right?
Yeah.
You have best of 3 matches that last for like 45 minutes that you barely get to play. You're getting stomped and the game's just not over,
Yeah.
like, and it's just the like you get all, imagine playing Pokemon
Mm-hmm.
and you played just the best cards of all your colors, or like you played the best cards, and it was actually literally the ADP meta.
Yeah.
You played the best cards because the best cards won, and if you weren't playing the best cards, you just lost to people that were playing the best cards.
Exactly.
That's how Magic's been for a long while.
Oof.
they introduced these cards that should be banned, that should be rotated out,
Mhm.
all this other stuff. But they changed the way that rotation works. They have, I don't want to say that they haven't addressed problematic cards, but they just go, okay, we're going to ban this thing
Sure.
because statistics tell us that this thing's a problem. And you're just like, okay, yeah, but this other stuff doesn't feel good to play against. I
Right.
guess a real good example of this is like, let's talk about Pokemon as a whole again.
Yeah.
Does any deck not feel good to play against? Right? Like,
Yeah.
only thing is stall. And even stall, if you tech for it, it's not that you're not having a good time.
Right.
It's that you're just looking to get your stuff and you're solving a puzzle. That's all it really is.
It's an alternative win condition, not unwinnable. Like,
Right.
that's it. Like, talk to me about the price comparison between being a competitive Magic the Gathering player, if you were going to play paper cards and go to tournament circuits, versus somebody who would play Pokemon the trading card game.
So imagine the volatileness of Pokemon where, when I say volatileness, I mean like cards rotate out, they're not worth any money anymore.
Mhm.
Cards will be you'll have an $8 card and then
Yeah.
it'll rotate out and it'll be a like a nickel card.
Right.
Like literally not worth the cardboard it's printed on. Imagine that, except and the worst part is that in Magic you could still play them all.
Right.
But somehow they go down from being a $60 card to being like a $20 card. Or you'll have price memory on this stuff. Sorry, I feel like I'm jumping off on a completely different point.
Yeah, go for it.
But the whole idea is that like in Pokemon, a standard deck is at most $70,
Mm-hmm.
$80, and then you have the chance to bling it out to make it look really awesome, like I do.
Yeah.
And then you go and you make a standard deck, and you're like, wow, this deck is. And then even when the deck rotates, or we get new cards that make decks kind of worse.
Yeah.
They're still not unplayable.
Sure.
They're still playable. You could probably, if you had a tier 1 deck from last rotation and you brought, so a good example of this is single strike Lugia, right?
Right.
You don't see any single strike Lugia decks. It's just not great in the current format.
Yeah.
But if you showed up with a single strike Lugia to a cup, you could perform.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of. The meta's wide open. People just go, why would I play this when I could play all this other stuff that's better?
Mm-hmm.
A great example of this is the Palkia deck that's going around.
Sure.
Palkia was a really, really strong deck, like, 4 months ago, 5 months ago?
Yeah.
And then it got all these great increases and then it became Chien-Pao.
Mm-hmm.
And then people were like, well, what if I took all these really good water cards and then I just put it into a Palkia shell? And then now you have Palkia again.
Exactly.
Right? But like, still, the costs to change and upgrade and do all this stuff is so cheap. The secondary market for Pokemon is really easy to get into because the amount of cards that are being opened, the willingness for people to not make money off of singles and all this other stuff. It's because you have like the super rare alternate art cards that people are pulling for.
Right.
And even those don't sell for that much anymore.
Sure.
It's just like, if you're going to play Pokemon, do it. It's really cheap. You could even play online. Buy codes.
Yeah.
Like, buy codes.
And you don't even have to do that half the time. They give you decks in the game now. The game is terrible. I mean, other than that. But I mean, besides that, if you want to learn how to play, there you go. You've got it.
And honestly, I would rather have a PTCGL.
Yeah.
That is in the current state it is in without it getting microtransactions.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
all I'm going to say.
Yeah. There's zero microtransactions in the game. So, I mean, now we're going to kind of jump back to the community aspect. And I know this is a touchy subject when it comes to Magic the Gathering, but talk to me about, as a Magic player, what is the differences, or what are the differences of the community for Magic the Gathering that you've personally experienced versus what you've experienced with the Pokemon community?
The Magic the Gathering community is very, very whatever, I'm just gonna say it. It's very, very overpopulated.
Okay.
The creator content space, everybody wants to be a Magic the Gathering content creator, and it's and you get, since we have this ease of access through Commander, because you need 4 people in a video.
Yeah.
or you need this, you get a whole bunch of really bad stuff. So you get like and it's not bad because they're bad creators. It's bad because they're new, or because they don't have the time to put stuff behind it, or maybe content creation is just not for them. Right. Or people don't have time to put in the effort, or they're just not good at it. You get a whole bunch of people in there, and everybody wants to try their foot at it because everybody thinks that they can make a quick dollar doing the things that they love. And then you get people who are like really good that are working their butts off but are never going to be seen.
Yeah.
Right. And then it becomes less. And then now there's this new trend that I've seen, that this is kind of what made me step out, is this new trend of, it's less about people getting together who like Magic the Gathering and more about Magic the Gathering. And it's now become, it's all about me who happens to also play Magic the Gathering. And I'm not talking, and there's not a bad side to that. If you're an interesting person, you got a good personality,
right?
That's awesome. But those are just chatting streamers.
Gotcha.
That happen to play Magic the Gathering.
Okay.
And those aren't bad. Now, I should note this. I moderate for one of the biggest just chatting streamers on Twitch. Right? Like, I moderate for Asmongold. It's not like it's going to be a thing that, like, I'm not dissing you for it. But it's no longer a situation. Everybody's trying to be the next personality, and they're no longer trying to give good content.
Right. I got
Or any content in some people's cases.
Yeah.
There are people who their whole entire shtick is that they don't make content. They just want to go on people's streams.
Gotcha. It was just a vessel to get a lot of people, is kind of what you're getting at. It's just, I like the game, so I'm going to stream it for a bunch of people, and now I'm a community pillar, and here we go.
Yeah, like a lot of the great community creators that we have are people that are like, I have a love for the game. I want to talk to other people that have a love for the game. Sure. I want to be a part of the community.
Right.
And now we're getting this shift of, I'm a person in the community because I need to be noticed. You get a lot of people who are demanding a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
For not doing anything.
Gotcha.
Or having really low quality content, and they're like, hey, and I don't want to be like, oh, you want a participation award. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you have to at least participate to get the participation award.
Gotcha.
So that's it. That's very controversial. I hope this doesn't air, but it will air.
Yeah,
that's fine.
right. But I mean, as an alternative perspective, I mean, you're on Twitter, unfortunately, here, but you know, we use the app. That's kind of the vessel. We shifted from Facebook years ago, which was kind of a cesspool from my perspective, from a lot of different Pokemon opinions. And now we're on Twitter, where there's still the opinions of a lot of people, but I feel like it's kind of flushed itself out because everything is in the public. I don't know the Magic the Gathering community on the Twitterverse or really the Twitch area that you would have that community. But tell me about, you know, what your experience so far getting back, you know, what was it, maybe a year ago you got back into Pokemon, right? And you've seen how Twitter people interact in the Pokemon community. Would you compare it as a better comparison or a lesser comparison there?
Okay, so let me give you a day in the life of the MTG Twitterverse.
Sure.
Man, guys, this card's very, very strong. It should get banned. Why would you want this card to get banned? It's my favorite card. And then everybody and their mother wants the likes and retweets and stuff like that, so they talk about that card.
Sure.
That's it.
Okay.
That's how the Magic community goes. Then you get to the point where you're like me and you mute half the Magic community. And then the people that you unmute are people who you care about their opinions. Or you get this stuff, or it's people saying, guys, check out my bud. They're really, really good at what they do. Look at this cool deck that was made.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're just like, hey, look. You know, or you see some really weird fan art, and then you retweet the heck out of it, and you make some photoshops, and you do some funny stuff.
Nice.
But like Twitter's the same thing as everything else. It's whoever you surround yourself with. That's the type of experience you're gonna get.
Gotcha. Pokemon
has been very, very much like a baby MTG Twitterverse.
Okay.
So you go back when it was like originally a 60 card competitive format, you hear people talk about, look at this cool deck I got. Look at these deck lists I have. Look at this cool switch that I did. The one of the one of my favorite Twitters to follow is Nick Pokeduels
Oh
TikTok.
yeah.
Because it's a lot of like, can I curse on this?
Yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, well I'll curse for this thing. It's a lot of shit posting,
Yeah.
right? And it's funny and it's interesting, and then you'll get legit other stuff too on top of it.
Right.
And that's the type of thing that you want. You want people who have a sense of humor
Mm-hmm.
that aren't out to chase fame.
Yeah.
They're just simply sharing their love of the game.
Mm-hmm. As far as that goes, I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into that because I want to get your perspective on going to in real life events, because you've obviously been featured at in real life Magic the Gathering events versus going to something that's like in real life Pokemon event. What are the different perspectives there?
Man, dude, let me tell you that going in real life Pokemon events is one of those. So they're very much the same competitively, right? You go up, you check a board, you check your matchups, you go to your matchups, you sit down, you play your game, you call a judge when you need to, when there's a mess up, etc., etc. And honestly, you're gonna get the most genuine response from people in person when you're playing in a tournament.
Gotcha.
I really think that overall, Pokemon is like a Pokemon is the feeling that you get from Pokemon events is the same exact stuff that you got from big events at Magic. It's just that there's less side events and less people trying to sell their cards.
So, to follow up as the last question, I want to ask you, as a Magic the Gathering player who sometimes actually plays Pokemon the trading card game, would you and how would you recommend playing Pokemon to a Magic the Gathering player?
Okay, so this is a very unique thing, right? Because I think that you should, if you are a Magic the Gathering player and you're looking for that 60 card format again and that feeling of like a good supported standard, now is the best time to jump into Pokemon. This format is very, very it's very, very good. It's very, very welcoming, and it's a little bit easier to get started. And one of the hardest things in Pokemon when you were originally playing over the past 2 or 3 years, right, has been getting your setup.
Right.
And now that you no longer have to worry about stuff like Bridget, and all of these other setups and what are your lines and stuff like that, and stuff's a little bit more consistent, you're more playing the game rather than getting ready to play the game. So I would say go out of your way and learn to play now. Like, this is the time. Install PTCGL, get a free deck, hit the ladder with that free deck. I think the free deck is Goldengo, which is pretty great. Goldengo's a real fun list that is competitive. It is not a solid tier 1 list, but it is like 4 revisions of being a solid tier 1 list. Like, I would say play it. Understand that all these stuff that you were like, you thought was premium in Magic, like a lot of draw and a lot of all this stuff, is no longer premium. It's all about being able to plan your turn, getting stuff set out. You don't really have to predict as much about what your opponent's doing during their turn, as long as unless like it's down to like prize by prize, right? There's a tempo to the game.
Yeah.
It's super fun. And it's very much a way to a low skill floor with a very high skill ceiling.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it. A good example of this is that, like, so PJ, not to promote myself at all, but like, I'm making like the Poke Primer stuff where, it's a way for new people to get into certain deck lists and all this stuff. And I've had to learn how to play a lot of these decks because I didn't play a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
You know me, I was the person that played one deck in Standard.
Yeah.
And that was just what it was. I'd find a deck that I really liked, play in Standard, never switch. I'm now using Pokemon TCG Live, and I'm switching through every single deck, and I'm like, okay, how do I set this up? How do I do this? I message PJ, what is this card used for?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and then if you ever want to know where the best lists are, you go to Limitless, you click on the deck lists, you get the tournament results from the best deck, and you find a list you like. As long as it day two'd, it's probably worth playing. It does not have to be a top 8 list. So,
absolutely. Okay.
Yeah. So I would say do it. If you want to be a content creator in Pokemon, that's a completely different story. You have to find your niche. You have to do hours of researching and still not succeed.
Right. But here we are. And I like to think of this channel as a pretty decent resource for a lot of newer players or players
Mhm.
just looking to get a little bit better at the competitive aspect too. So, and there's so many other channels out there too. If you want to find out how to play the best decks, I mean, it's way different than when we were kids. To get into something like that, I'm sure if you're watching this and you're a Magic the Gathering player, you have unlimited resources on that realm as well. But I'm just saying it's also
Yep.
here. So very cool. I love to get your perspective on this, James, and talk to you a little bit more about the growth of the Pokemon community. And we're taking on so many other games,
Mhm.
gamers from other games rather, whether it's Yu-Gi-Oh, whether it's people that just don't really like Lorcana anymore, and then obviously more importantly Magic the Gathering, who's gotten, I'd say, probably the most publicity out of any trading card game of all time, with Magic the Gathering. So
Okay, so I guess what I should say is that in looking at Magic the Gathering versus other card games, Magic the Gathering is probably always going to be the king card game, like
mhm,
the card game.
right.
Pokemon has its own aspect that the way that I sell Pokemon to people,
Mhm,
especially parents and things of the sort, is Pokemon TCG is so good. It's one that you want to introduce to your kids because it's made for kids to be able to easily understand,
mhm,
but parents will also love it as well.
got it.
Like, remember when, well, you just look at our shop.
Right.
The parents come in even sometimes without their kids because their kids are busy that weekend.
Yeah.
Oh, little Johnny has to go to soccer with his mom, so I'm gonna come and I'm gonna grind this standard event.
Right.
Like that says huge amounts. I know, like our mutual friend, Ek was telling me about how he has his nephew that wants to get into that opens a bunch of Pokemon,
Mhm,
and he wants to learn how to play Pokemon.
sure.
So I go, yeah, teach him how to play Pokemon, and you also learn how to play Pokemon because you're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, exactly. And I know that obviously there's other card games. There's a lot of reading and there's a lot of competitiveness that goes along with getting into the card games. A lot of actions per
Mhm.
turn, so it does get confusing. I mean, also Magic the Gathering is nice because look back in the day, it was featured on ESPN, it was featured on MTV. There's all these other ways
Mhm.
of growth that Magic has had where Pokemon doesn't have, but it's also that Pokemon trading card game is just like a subsidiary of the Pokemon company overall, whereas Magic the
Right,
Gathering is just Magic the Gathering. That's it.
right.
So,
And honestly, I think if the design keeps up the way it has been this year,
mm-hmm.
Pokemon will grow immensely.
Yeah.
It is so good right now. And even getting into the casting and stuff like that, this has been so much fun to cast and talk about
Mm-hmm.
and like be like, look at these cards, look at all this stuff.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic overall.
Awesome. Well, once again, James, thank you so much for being here. If you want to give any sort of shout outs or talk about yourself anymore, where can everybody find you?
Guys, you can find me all over the place. I am on YouTube at Voiddyn Pokemon, VOIDDYN dash Pokemon, where I do Poke Primers. I'm working on shorts, doing a bunch of stuff. I'm probably going to be recording like 3 or 4 shorts because I already have the setup going. So, might as well do that. I play a little bit of Commander on people's streams on Twitch, so you'll find me all over the place playing Magic there. You can find me on Twitter or X now at Voiddyn, VOIDDYN. And just shout me out there. I'm not as active as much anymore because the Pokemon community is not as active as the Magic community, and I'm trying to get out of that daily grind set mindset. I'm trying to just be like, hey, I do this because I like it, not because I need to do it. So,
Gotcha.
and I think that's about it for me.
Cool. Well, hopefully that gives you a perspective if you are a Magic the Gathering player, and maybe this was just the turning point on why you'd try to start a new game like Pokemon the Trading Card Game. If you did like videos like this, again, we will have some more, but leave your comments down below. Make sure you're hitting the like button here if you did like this content, and share it with a friend if you want them to know a little bit more about transitioning to Pokemon the Trading Card Game. As always, this is PJ here from the Shuffle Squad signing off. We'll catch you next time.
Hey trainers, tired of having too many cards lying around? I know that feeling, and I know what a hassle it is to try and sell those cards. But selling bulk is now easier than ever with TCG Bulk. Find tons of potential buyers in a single place. You just download the app, look for the best buyer near you, and carefully pack your bulk, ship it, and you get paid. It really is that simple. Turn the cards you don't want into the cards you absolutely need for your next deck. You made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching this entire video from the Shuffle Squad. Honestly, from the bottom of our hearts, we appreciate each and every person that supports our content, watches what we have going on every single day, every single week, even from time to time, and continuously allows us to have a forum to project our creative content towards the Pokemon TCG community. So if you haven't already, be sure to give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and even leave a comment to help boost the YouTube algorithm. That being said, we'll catch you with our next video. Thanks again. Take it easy.